All righty, guys. It is July 16th. It is our Self-Directed Saturday here with Quest Trust Company. I'm so glad all of you guys out there can join. We're going to take a minute real quick, just let everyone kind of log on in and get started. So I wanted to talk about a couple of housekeeping rules just as we kind of get moving forward. Please leverage the chat box. All right. The chat box is for all you guys out there, whether it's you're listening via YouTube, listening via stream, listening via Zoom, or listening via Facebook, right? Because we're broadcasting on all those platforms. Use the chat box to do things like ask questions to the speaker. Use the chat box to go ahead and ask questions to one another. Pitch your deals. Hey, I'm a lender. Hey, I'm a wholesaler, right? That's what we're looking for. So make sure you're using the chat box. I'll make sure it pops up right there on the screen. Now, as we kind of get started today, I really wanted to let people know that today's topic is very unique and close to my heart. I started with Quest. I've been affiliated with them since about 2010. And ever since then, there's been one group that I have consistently worked with nonstop. A lot of our clients that come from them are higher end doctors, right? Some of the top cardiovascular surgeons in the US, right? They've become good friends, but more importantly, they've done so much for the community that a lot of times I think most of you guys don't even realize. From things such as baseball organizations, right, to really doing a lot towards cancer organizations, which we'll be talking a little bit about now. But really what I wanted to do today was take a minute and bring on one of their top executives to really bring up why they raise capital, other things that are going on in the market, how you can invest with groups like them, right? And lastly, we'll end on certain things like rates of return. So as we were reaching out to this group that I've worked with for multiple years, a little over a decade now, we really wanted to have, like I said, our top executives on here. So what we did is we got Thomas Haug. Thomas, how are you doing today?
Thank you for having me, and
yeah,
everyone for joining us on a Saturday.
Yeah, so Thomas, really what I'm going to do is I'm going to let you take the floor. As questions pop up, I might put them up there on the screen or whatnot, but really, as we kind of go through these motions, the floor is yours. I'm here in the background. Really what I'm going to do at the end of this is then you and I will kind of do a quick Q&A to kind of recap everything you talked about. But your place looks really nice.
Thank you very much.
All right. So, Thomas, it is all yours. Go ahead.
So good morning and good early afternoon for all of you that are joining us from different parts of the United States this morning. Once again, thank you for taking your time on a Saturday to join us and hear a little bit about myself and what we are doing at ZT Corporate. So just to share a brief background on myself, I'm going to just move this over so it's out of the way. I am the Managing Director of Private Equity New York for ZT Corporate, and I'm also the CEO and founder of a multifamily office based out of New York called Aspen Advisory, which has catered to about 31 single-family offices throughout my career, where I focused on alternative investments. And today I'd like to talk a little bit about private equity. And private equity is a timely topic to talk about, especially given some of the market turbulence that we are seeing today. So as far as a market overview, I like to start with a little bit of a market overview. As you have seen, public markets have been turbulent, and that's an understatement. Inflation rose about 9.1% in June, which was more than expected again. With yesterday's 659-point pop on the Dow, investors and Wall Street followers were very excited to see that pop. However, the market still closed down. The S&P 500 jumped to 3863, spot 16. And the NASDAQ composite bounced to 11,452.42. The market is starting to feel a little bit more comfortable, given the Fed probably will not be delivering a full point increase at the end of the month, which may give some more comfort around public markets. But we're still feeling the fallout from the crypto crash and other turbulent events that we've had as of late. The June jobs numbers were strong, with payrolls increasing by 372,000, which was more than expected. And one last thing I would like to share before we kind of jump into what private equity is and the ZT portfolio. Yesterday, Jim Rogers shared with us and said he thinks stocks will decline for a long time, and quote, "This has been the worst bear market of my lifetime, which means it will go down a lot. It will go down a lot and last a long time." Okay, this is coming from a Wall Street investor, an iconic Wall Street investor who started the Quantum Fund, was very influential in starting the Soros Fund. And, I do take what he says with significant heart. So jumping into the ZT portfolio, I would like to talk about some of the great exits that ZT has had, which is in excess of $350 million. And those are a combination of the Altus health system, as well as the pharmacies, Popeyes, and some others. So Altus Infusion, which you may have previously heard on one of these great Quest Trust webinars, has been exited, and we've had very happy investors that were participants in that. Altus Hospice, Home Health Care, Pine Peak Healthcare, Altus Pharmacy, and Popeyes Louisiana Kitchen, which was once again another great exit for the company. The core portfolio investments in healthcare, as previously mentioned, is Altus Health, Austin Emergency Center, Neighbors ER, Altus Emergency Centers, which includes 3 hospitals and 15 emergency rooms. Later in the conversation today, we will talk a little bit about a note offering that ZT has, which offers its investors about 1% a month over a 2-year note period, totaling 24% over those 2 years. And if you let it amortize without taking your monthly distributions, you do have the opportunity to accrue to about 26.9%. So hopefully in the near future, you will see the number of hospitals in the ERs increase to about 3 hospitals and 19 emergency rooms. Right to my right-hand side, you see the revenue for 2021 was about $250 million, with adjusted 2021 EBITDA of $42 million. Enterprise value is over $600 million. Equity value, once again, nearing that $500 million mark at $420 million, with a core basis of $60 million. So this portfolio is a portfolio that is very, very close to the core of what ZT does. Next, I will share a complementary and evenly significant part of the ZT portfolio, which is the automotive dealerships. So later on in the call, we will talk a little bit more about what ZT Corporate does as some ancillary businesses, but healthcare and automotive are really the 2 main business lines that we like to focus on, where we feel that we outperform most of our peers, if you will. So some of the flags that we have in the ZT portfolio include Toyota, BMW, Mercedes-Benz, Mazda, Chevrolet, Fiat, GMC, Ford, Chrysler, Dodge, Chevy, Ram, Jeep, and Buick. And some of you may recognize the names Steve Rayburn, Chevrolet, and Ron Carter out of the greater Houston area. And if we flip to the right-hand side of the screen, and we talk about revenue for that portfolio. The 2021 revenue is just over $500 million at $529 million. Adjusted EBITDA for 2021 was $44 million. Enterprise value about $625 million. Equity value $440 million. And the cost basis on that portfolio is $75 million. So this will give you an idea of who we are as a private equity firm, based out of Houston, Texas, New York, and Los Angeles. We would love to spend time with any of you. If you would like to come visit us in person, or we can schedule a call, we'd love to tell you a little bit more about our portfolios. But today we are here to really talk about some of the turbulent times we are living and what private equity is. So on the next slide, you will see what is private equity. Private equity is an investment in a private company, not a public exchange or publicly listed company. So examples of that are limited partnerships, limited liability companies, and delisted public companies that were unable to stay on a public domain, or even pink sheet companies that may be delisted for capital constraints or other reasons. Misconceptions of private equity. Private equity is limited to specific industries. Private equity is inaccessible and only available to institutional capital. Private equity investments are typically distressed assets. Private equity investments are all high risk, high reward type investments. And private equity investments are always large investments, which all of these, as much as it may ring, hey, this is what I have heard, these are all common misconceptions that do not ring true, especially to the core ZT model. So now we could get into some of the pros and cons of private equity, which will myth bust some of the previously mentioned things that I had mentioned. So some of the pros of private equity offers unique investment opportunities that can diversify investors' portfolios. Investments are not directly tied to the performance of the public market, which is why I started today's conversation out by talking about some of the public market turbulence. And I wanted to highlight why private investments sometimes have a beneficial place in your portfolio. And in the case of most of my clients, they all lead with alternative investments. So you're not seeing your traditional 60-40 portfolios. Private equity investments can produce high returns when compared to public markets. Private equity investments typically prove more variety of investment options than what is available on public markets. And examples of that are call options, warrants, convertible debt, short versus long-term debt. And then let's talk about some of the negatives to private equity. And I will highlight a few reasons that those negatives or the cons should be considered, but are right for most of the investors we are speaking to and most of you on this call today, subject to obviously quality, insurance, and investor suitability. So some of the cons of private equity is that private equity investments are typically liquid. So private equity investments are typically illiquid. I don't know why this says liquid. For the period of time that that private equity investment is held. And obviously through some of our key partners, if needed, we can provide liquidity, but private equity does have less liquidity than public market investments do. Information on private companies are typically limited. This is true 90% of the time. And once we're finished with this, I will speak a little bit further about the cycle and growth of investments and where you get more of that information, but what some of the downside associated with that is. Private equity investments typically require more investor due diligence, and that's where members of the Quest team, the ZT team, and teams like Aspen Tree Advisory come into place to help investors feel comfortable prior to their writing a check. Private equity investments typically require more investor due diligence. Investments are limited to high net worth and accredited investors. One example of that is 200,000 of income annually, and typically there's a lack of management rights compared to voting rights in public stocks. So those are some of the key takeaways to why there are some cons to private equity. Now, when I have this conversation with my clients, I generally say when you look at a private investment, there's a growth cycle to that company. And in private equity, certain points of that is where companies like ZT Corporate take advantage of getting involved with those companies. So there's the startup phase, the growth phase, the maturity phase, and the decline phase. And generally in private equity, you try to invest on the early side, or if you can, early in the life cycle, and you exit by the maturity phase, which a great option for that is actually the notes that ZT Corporate does offer. How participating, let me move this again for you guys. Here we go. So how participating in private equity can boost your portfolio. Number one, participating in private equity can diversify your holdings. You can invest passively into local or national businesses and aim for higher returns than the public market. And I think those are a few key factors when considering what to invest in or how to diversify your holdings. So I am going to pop forward one slide right here. Typical investments in private equity include equity ownership in the company, preferred equity, investor prioritized before management and payouts, which this is an example of most of the time and something that is key to one of the core values of ZT Corporate, and the availability of promissory notes, debt investments into existing companies. So, some of the typical investments and considerations is the time horizon of your investment and growth versus income. So when we talk about growth versus income, we could talk a little bit about the notes that I had mentioned multiple times throughout this conversation. On the growth side of it, you're able to basically make 1% per month, 12% per year, 24% over 2 years if you take your monthly distributions. And if you do look for income, you could take your monthly distributions to gain some of that income, still making 24% per annum. I'm sorry, 24% over a 2-year period, 12% per annum. Ways to invest in private equity. People always wonder, how do I source private equity deals? How can I invest in private equity? And today we would like to highlight some of that. So the vehicles by which you could invest in private equity is individually, once again, as long as you pass investor suitability, through entities such as LLCs and limited partnerships, and self-directed retirement plans, which is obviously why we have our wonderful partners from Quest Trust Company hosting you today on this Saturday call. At this point, I would like to open this conversation up to some questions for our guests that are with us today.
Sure. Well, Thomas, a couple things is you're being very humble in a lot of your presentation, the way you're speaking and presenting right now. But for all you guys out there that don't realize, the company of ZT, which was originally ZT Wealth, and they adopted, the Atlas Foundation, and then in addition, AZTMOTORS. You guys have a very unique method of finding a lot of these investments for your clients. And I think that's one of the reasons you guys have done so well. So as of right now, how many employees roughly do you think the ZT kind of oversees?
So ZT oversees over 2,500 employees.
2,500 employees. Now, guys, I want you out there that are listening to understand that typically when a company gets that type of size, if you want to invest with them, you're investing into a public style company, buying public stocks. It's traded on the New York Stock Exchange and NASDAQ. So one of the things that they've been able to do is keep this private style industry, which is also why they've blown up so big. Now, I know you're mainly located up there because you're in New York right now, but you also have an office out here in Texas. So is the headquarters actually there in New York, or is the headquarters out here in Houston?
So our headquarters is down in Houston, as I believe I highlighted early on in the call. If we go back to the years leading up to getting to know ZT, ZT has always had a very strong New York presence, as well as obviously headquartering itself in Houston. So one of the unique aspects to ZT is it has a strong connection to Wall Street, strong connection to the local economy here in New York, yet also offers a great Wall Street quality private equity firm down in Houston. And as may have previously been mentioned as well, Derek, there is a presence in LA. And having an LA presence for ZT has been amazing because there are a lot of people seeking private equity investments such as the ones that we offer. And now they have access to not only the deal flow, but boots on the ground there on the West Coast.
Now, we've talked a lot today about private equities, raising capital, what it looks like just to do a pretty standard private equity investment. Now, there is a lot of places out there that are considered private equity, whether I'm looking at multifamily type of syndications, storage units, senior living facilities. But one thing I think that really sets the ZT team apart is a lot of things that you do for the community. So, and I know Mohsen, really spends a lot of time up there with the ZT baseball. Are you allowed to talk a little bit about that and the baseball teams and how much you guys give back to the community just from that team or that standpoint?
So I can give you a very brief overview on ZT baseball, which is one of the largest, or I can say the largest, and I'll say the largest as this is my personal opinion. And the reason for that is I do believe it is the largest, but just to be sure, one of the largest youth baseball leagues that exist. I was actually on a call with one of my colleagues based down in Houston earlier today, and he had went to Orlando to support the youth baseball game that was going on today there. It's a really, really fabulous part of being involved with the ZT corporate family, if you will. There are lots of charitable aspects, and I believe you wanted to mention maybe our annual gala that we host, so on and so forth. So I'll leave that.
Which kind of leads to the next aspect as well, which is the Atlas Foundation. And the very first time that I even heard about the Atlas Foundation was in 2018, I think it was. And during that aspect, really what ended up happening was I got to see a big side of ZT on how they're donating for a lot of the charities and stuff from the hospital standpoint. So can you talk some about the Atlas Foundation, then we'll talk a little bit about the gala.
Sure. So the Altus Foundation, obviously having some of our core roots in healthcare and in other communities throughout Texas, New York, and the LA region. Altus Health, Austin Emergency Clinic, Neighbors ER, and the emergency centers obviously sees people when they're not in their best health unless it's some sort of elective procedure. And it is very much part of the core values of ZT to give back to some of those charitable organizations that we work with.
Absolutely. And so the only reason I'm bringing all this up is for those of you out there listening, is a lot of times when we do these presentations and these classes here on Saturday, it's so much about the investment. It's so much about, hey, where can I put my money? And a lot of times I think a lot of you guys out there get sold by a salesperson on the investment, and you don't actually do enough research on the background of the company. And so you have to understand that one of the reasons I'm only asking about all this stuff is behind the scenes, you guys oversee 2,500 employees. You give a lot back between the ZT baseball teams that helps a lot of the kids out there for after-school programs. You give a lot back from the Outless Foundation for the Cancer Society's aspect of things to honestly just share. And I even know a lot of your board members out there as well, from just on what they do. And they've even helped me out personally. Which brings to the gala. In Houston, you guys are hosting on December 10th a gala. Now, if you guys have been to a gala and stuff before, they're always fancy and nice and honestly, to some degree, amazing and fun. But your guys's are different than anyone's I've ever been to. So are you allowed to talk about the gala right now?
Yeah, so I would encourage, and hopefully you can share the list of guests that we have on with us today. I would encourage everyone on this call to take the opportunity to come join us this December for the annual gala. We have multiple celebrities, which I may or may not be able to mention, that participate with us. One of our great board members is the famed ex-New York Yankee, Alex Rodriguez. And I was introduced to ZT back in about 2014 by another affiliate of ZT. So I've gotten to see the organization grow. I've participated in some of the annual galas, and it is really one of those uplifting experiences that will make you feel one as part of the ZT family. So we would love to have you out there. We would love for all of you to participate in the annual gala. And we will be sending information out to give more information.
So now that we talked about all the good stuff that you guys do and kind of where the background thing comes into play for you and your organization, let's talk a little bit more about some of the investments. Now, from my standpoint of view, like I said, I've been affiliated with Quest since about 2010. And during that time frame with you guys, I've had clients invest with you every single month. And for those of you out there who don't understand this, they have never missed a payment. And how often does someone invest with you guys if they have one of the notes from you? How often do you make a payment?
So, Derek, I love that you just said that, because that is not something that I would openly announce on a call like this, because I do find it a little bit self-promoting. But yes, on the notes, we are on our fifth note right now, as I did mention earlier. And we have never missed either an interest payment or principal payment to those investors. And another thing you mentioned, Derek, is that there are investors that continuously participate in the ZT offerings, either when they're when they're exiting one of their notes that come due, they roll it over, or as they have some additional cash flow, especially in turbulent public market times like this, they pick up the phone, call us up, and ask us what they could invest in. So go ahead, Derek.
Well, so some of my largest clients, it's funny, I look in their portfolio and I used to see things like physical real estate property, some other promissory notes, some syndications, and then a ZT deal. And then it's funny, they're like, oh, that looked really good. So then I see 2 ZT deals. Before I know it, their whole portfolio is nothing but ZT, but it is still diversified because of the motors, the outlets, the wealth, each individual aspect that you guys pretty much have. So with that being said, too, I know you guys make a consistent monthly payment. Now, obviously, I have the choice. If I was to work with you guys, I could receive that monthly payment, but you guys can go ahead and keep that monthly payment to allow it to compound as well if the lender chooses that. Is that correct?
Sure. So, so that monthly number is about 1% per month, 12% per year, 24% over a 2-year period. If you do take your monthly distribution, and if you don't take your monthly distribution, it equates to about 26.9% over a 2-year period. That said, right now we have a current $30 million note that we're offering to increase our healthcare portfolio. And we have about $7 million of capacity left on that. Derek, one thing that I would like to highlight here is, on that portfolio, it is our healthcare portfolio. And as previously mentioned, we will be increasing those 15 emergency rooms to about 19, give or take a few as some flow comes in. And ultimately, in the next couple of years, upon notes maturing, so on and so forth, we will be exiting that portfolio opportunistically.
Yep.
So that is the one offering that we do have right now. And as you had alluded to before, we have done similar offerings in our automotive portfolio and other portfolios.
Now, Quest, because I do represent Quest, I want everyone out to understand that I can never endorse a product. Right? I can never say, hey, take your money and invest with this individual. And you out there always 100% need to do your own due diligence. But when it comes to doing due diligence with a company like yours, it's actually very simple. It really is, because you can look up to Sear, who's your guys' pretty much co-founder, and he's been doing this since 1998, 97, I think. Is that right?
Yep. Yeah, you're right on the spot.
Yep. And then, so what's really nice too is he's very well known in this space. And a lot of times out there, I think we always are promoting things like real estate related assets. Storage units, senior living facility, multifamily complexes, single family homes, Airbnbs, etc. But this is a chance in a different way for everyone to invest their IRAs into healthcare. I don't know about you, but Thomas, correct me if I'm wrong, we always need healthcare.
We will always need healthcare, especially coming out of this pandemic that we just dealt with COVID still affecting some others. And COVID is something that I think has opened some individuals' eyes to, wow, we can have some sort of pandemic or health scare on a very large level, where people that don't necessarily think of healthcare as, a daily need, knock on wood, to something that affects all of us. Now, some of the key parts to healthcare that I would love to mention is when you think about our surgical centers and the hospitals with the standalone ERs, these are all high quality facilities where not only are the investors that invest in our portfolio, they're also the doctors that are the surgeons and the other docs in our healthcare facilities. So, that amazed me when I visited some of our facilities in the greater Houston area and Baytown, so on and so forth, because our investors are the guys wearing the scrubs, the guys performing the surgeries, the guys treating the facilities like their own, which then resonates down to the patient level and the quality of care that people receive.
And it's very unique. And because I've been to multiple of your guys' galas out there, I actually have gotten to meet a lot of those surgeons and a lot of those doctors and physicians out there. And it's nice to see that they do feel like they have ownership in the hospital or ER room and et cetera, that they're working in. And I think that's what really separates you and your team apart. So, Thomas, kind of as we come to an end, how can people get a hold of you? What is the best way to go about that?
Sure. So I can give everyone my email address, which is thaug, THAUG, at ztcorporate.com. So it's thaug at ztcorporate.com. And my Find Me Anywhere phone number, if you will, is area code 516-945-7500. Once again, 516-945-7500.
Bam. So I got the number right up there on the screen for everyone if they want to take it down briefly. Now, remember, Thomas here is in New York. So if you're out there and you're one of our clients here in Texas, now I know we have clients from all across the U.S., just, always be aware of the time change. It's also Saturday, so I don't know if he'll actually answer the phone on Saturday, but at least send him an email if you do have further questions with this as well. So, Thomas, like I said, I'm looking forward to the gala on December 10th out here in Houston. I've worked for your team for coming up on a decade now, so we love you guys. We really do. If you ever need anything from me, let me know. But don't go anywhere. We're going to end the broadcast, guys. So thank you so much for joining us here on our Self-Directed Saturday.
Before we end today, I would like to thank everyone for their time once again. I am available 7 days a week. Okay. And I would like to leave you off with something that Derek mentioned earlier, which is ZT Corporate started out as an organization called ZT Wealth. Okay, which was a wealth advisory business where people entrusted the core leadership team of ZT with finding them both internal and external investment opportunities. Okay, and we very much run the organization the same way today, where we are consultants and advisors to our clients. So, Derek, thank you for taking the time today. And I look forward to being in touch with all of you.
Awesome. Thank you, Thomas. Don't go anywhere just for a second. Bye, everyone. Thanks for joining us today.